We'll see what happens. It's going to be a bad problem for Iran if something happens, I can tell you that. They're not going to be happy. They are not going to be happy people. Okay? You can figure it out yourself. They know what I mean by it.
The president's comments follow the sabotage of 4 Saudi Arabian oil tankers. U.S. military officials say that Iran is likely behind this attack, according to the Wall Street Journal. Joining me right now is Fox News senior strategic analyst, retired General Jack Keane.
To the conclusion, because the United States has made a policy statement that is different from the past. They said, we are going to hold you, Iran, accountable for anything that your proxies do. We are going to react to you, not just to the proxies. That is a very different policy statement. So we'll see what happens here. I do think the Iranians are not going to do something so provocative that would involve a major operational response by the United States.
So you're in a war with Iran?
Yes.
That didn't take you a second?
2 strikes, the first strike and the last strike.
What are the conditions or the circumstances that would justify going to war with Iran?
Well, if Iran struck out militarily against the United States or against our allies in the region, then I would certainly expect a devastating response against Iran.
As somebody who fought in 2 fronts in the Middle East, both in Iraq and in Afghanistan, do you think it would be a good idea to go to war with Iran?
No, I don't advocate military action against Iran. I'm simply delivering the message that if Iran were to attack the United States, it would be a grave miscalculation on their part, and there would be a furious response.
I think Iran would be making a very big mistake if they did anything. If they do something, it'll be met with great force, but we have no indication that they will.
You want to know what perpetual warfare is, never-ending war. That's what a war with Iran would mean. The United States Congress must do everything it can to prevent a war with Iran. And by the way, not inconsequentially, the Constitution of the United States is very clear. And that is that it is the Congress and not the president who determines whether or not we go to war.
We do not want the situation to escalate. This is about deterrence, not about war. We're not about going to war. This is about continuing to protect our interests in the Middle East and conducting the missions that we are there to perform.
I worry very much that intentionally or unintentionally, we can create a situation in which a war will take place. And let me tell you, I think when you do that, you're talking about a war that will go on and on and on.
Fondamentalisme et intégrisme qui sont au pouvoir en Iran. Nous sommes contre le terrorisme, que le régime de Mollah est le centre d'exportation du terrorisme et fondamentalisme au Moyen-Orient.
Spouses to divorce and weekly ideological cleansing sessions.
The amusing thing is that the MEK will try to buy pretty much anyone. And I was approached to do events in support of the MEK. I know a number of other former government officials who found them truly detestable also were approached. You know, it's really something to have someone on the phone offering you $15,000 or $20,000 to appear at a panel discussion, because that doesn't happen for former diplomats every day.
Giuliani, former DNC chair Ed Rendell, and Trump Transportation Secretary Elaine Chao have spoken at or attended MEK's national conference.
There is a viable opposition to the rule of the Ayatollahs, and that opposition is centered in this room today.
That's John Bolton. He's speaking at the annual gathering of an Iranian dissident group known as the Mujahideen Khalq, or the MEK.
Retired Naval Captain Chuck Nash joins us. Captain, I guess Teddy Roosevelt said it, speak softly and carry a big stick. Do you think that the deployment of the Abraham Lincoln Carrier Battle Group to the Persian Gulf and the talk of, 120,000 American troops, that was enough to scare Tehran to back down?
Eric, I think that the Iranians realized that if they were to go into a conflict with the United States, that they would lose, and it would be a decisive loss. The mullahs are trying to keep power, and as we strengthen the sanctions, as we put pressure on the regime, things inside of Iran are getting worse by the day. They've got rampant inflation. There are demonstrations in the streets that we don't really hear about that much, but they're going on. There's a lot of distrust of the regime, and the people would like to have a different form of government. So they're trying to balance their domestic problems with what they perceive to be, and rightly perceived to be, an increasing military situation that's bordering around them.
Meanwhile, National Security Advisor John Bolton, he's been a longtime critic of Tehran. He supported the opposition group, the National Council of Resistance of Iran. And before he was appointed National Security Advisor, I want you to listen to some words that he said 2 years ago during a resistance rally right outside the United Nations when Hassan Rouhani, Iranian president, was speaking.
Ultimately, the safest way to guarantee peace internationally, peace in the Middle East, peace for the people of Iran is to overthrow this regime and have a free and fair election.
Is that possible?
Well, the NCRI is the only democratic option that exists to the mullahs today.
After 40 years of a brutal clerical dictatorship, today 80 million Iranians have had enough. Nationwide protests involving hundreds of thousands of Iranian citizens have raged for the past 14 months in towns and cities across Iran. Men, women, students, teachers, truck drivers, sugarcane workers, business owners, pensioners have taken to the streets in protest at the violence and larceny of the fascist clerical regime that has stolen Iran's wealth, oppressed its people, and waged proxy wars across the Middle East. Iran's middle class has virtually disappeared. Poverty is widespread. People now struggle to feed their families against a backdrop of power cuts, water shortages, soaring food prices, and unpaid wages. But the Iranian people have lost their fear. They're openly demanding regime change. In 1988, the regime massacred over 30,000 political prisoners, most of them supporters or members of the People's Mujahideen Organization of Iran, the PMOI or MEK. This is a regime that is now using its embassies as bomb factories and terror cells, plotting murders here in Europe and in America, instructing them to bomb a rally in Paris organized by the PMOI and the National Council of Resistance of Iran, the main democratic opposition to the mullahs. Well, appeasing and kowtowing to this brutal dictatorship is an historic mistake and a betrayal of the Iranian people. The mullahs must be held to account for their crimes. They cannot be allowed to benefit from impunity. The focus of the civilized world today is on the United Nations. Please heed the cries of the oppressed millions in Iran. Thank you very much.